What job do you have that sounds completely made up? This is a job I had in high school and early college years. I was a lifeguard response tester. I'd go to public pools or lakes with a lifeguard. Then I would pretend to drown and see how well they handled the situation. It was fun, except for when they'd fail and I had to walk over telling them, I was drowning for about 10 minutes out there. One woman tried to help me before the lifeguard realized once, and I just had to go with it. She did a mighty fine job. And others would just yell for the lifeguard. I go into a big vault for the Reserve Bank of New Zealand and I burn money. Every day, thousands of banknotes go to phase out the old ones to make way for the new. How's that monitored? Is each note accounted for, and has anyone, or yourself, ever tried to skim a few bucks from the burn pile? Bank of Canada had an interview once where they described and showed the interior. Cameras everywhere. Armed guards everywhere. Checkpoints, searches, x-rays everywhere. The risk versus reward is minimal. The most you might be able to escape with, if you're lucky, is a few bills, and the risk for that is years in prison. They also burn counterfeit bills at the same location. I do lighting for amusement parks. People generally tell me they never realized you could do that for a living. I remind them that someone has planned the lighting for anywhere you go. Speaking of amusement parks, I'm retired from a major theme park. I worked there as a scenic painter, making everything look aged, wood grain, things like that, plus murals. A lot of people don't look at those sort of things when they visit the parks, and many presume that the faux finishes are real. I find and keep track of submarines from an airplane. I attempt to read addresses on mail that machines can't read. The narrator had always wondered what happened to the letters whose addresses were unidentifiable because of his disastrous handwriting. Now we know. Some poor bugger is squinting furiously at the envelope while cursing me and making wild guesses. Follow-on comment? I write addresses on mail in full awareness that machines probably can't read it, but I get paid for it. On behalf of calligraphers everywhere, thank you for doing your job and making sure that bride who really likes the illegible modern script doesn't find half her invitations never arrived. Medical illustration. It's my job to create illustrations and animations for doctors, scientists, researchers, hospitals, medical device companies, museums, and textbook publishers that accurately represent and educate people about scientific and medical subjects. If you've ever seen an anatomical diagram at the doctor's office or an illustration in a biology book, then you've seen the work of a medical illustrator and not a fine artist. They need a medical and biological background to be able to accurately portray the required scientific information. My significant other is a horse hairdresser. She drives interstate to horse shows and competitions and plats their hair. You know those fire evacuation maps that are entirely useless because no one's going to stop and look at a map on their way out of a burning building? Yeah, I designed those. You know how Legoland is full of huge models with millions of bricks? People design, build, and glue those by hand, one brick at a time. I'm a model builder for Legoland, and I absolutely love what I do. A lot of people are asking how I got into my job. It was really a right place and right time kind of thing, since Legoland was opening a new workshop near me and hiring people to fill it. I've always been a massive fan and lifelong Lego builder, so my family and friends pushed me to apply. I took a building evaluation, showed them a portfolio of stuff I'd done growing up, and they liked it, so I got a job. We have people with backgrounds in theatre, biology, literature, and even former military. Some people there weren't even Lego builders before they applied. I'm not sure what they look for in the hiring process, but I sure stuck out to them being as passionate as I am about the bricks. I was a funeral musician for quite a long time, 4 to 6 funerals a week, mainly Catholic services. I made approximately $40,000 a year just in funeral service fees. Most people know that I'm joking when I tell them I did that as a job. Basically, I show up at funerals and play or sing religious service music. I could do it almost without thinking since there are really only 20 to 25 songs or hymns that people really want to hear at a funeral. You show them a list of suggestions and they get their service music, easy peasy. The times where you got an odd request were exciting by comparison. Show up 15 minutes before, leave 10 minutes after, collect your check on the way out. It sounds pretty heartless the way I describe it, and perhaps it is a bit. That sort of mindset is needed, however, to have any shot at being able to do the job. We all developed a bit of gallows humor just to cope with the sadness of comforting mourners on a daily basis. However, you can't really know what it's like to do that job until you're actually doing it. I've sung at a funeral for 4 dead kids and their mother who died trying to protect them in a freak house fire. I showed up to sing one time for the funeral of a 20-year-old who choked to death on a sour ball. The casket was still open. Some regions of the country have open casket calling hours in the church just before the service. Another time, I sang at the funeral of a woman who'd just given birth to her second child. Her family members were wailing and throwing themselves at the casket. If you think you know what I mean by wailing, you probably don't know. It's a unique, haunting sound that creeps into my mind at low moments. I call it the best-worst job I'll ever have. I work in Legionella risk assessment. My job is to assess the likelihood that Legionella bacteria will grow in a water system. It largely involves explaining how someone's water isn't safe to use, and then I get called horrible things. Most places I go are schools, hospitals, and care homes. Management teams try to reduce costs while making the establishment look nice. Often, one of the first areas cut is maintenance of the water system because people don't realize just how dangerous it can be not to look after it. Legionellosis can be fatal. I work in the UK and health and safety regulations are pretty strict. The US doesn't have any regulations on Legionella. The company I worked for estimated that roughly 1/3 of pneumonia-related deaths in the USA are as a result of a form of Legionellosis. This is because Legionnaire's disease is astonishingly similar to forms of pneumonia. The US has one of the highest mortality rates from pneumonia in the developed Western world. If you want to protect yourself, you can take some basic precautions. If you live in an apartment block, find out where your hot water comes from. If you have a storage cylinder in your flat, make sure it's heated to over 60 degrees or 140 Fahrenheit. It takes 20 minutes to kill most bacteria at this temperature. If the hot water is stored communally, there isn't much you can do. If you have a combination boiler or instant boiler on your wall somewhere, you should be fine in most instances. Make sure you use all of your taps once a week. This stops water going stagnant in your pipes and prevents bacteria from growing. Make sure you clean your shower heads. This is a big one. Bacteria love to grow in lime scale and grime. If you're spraying warm water through a dirty shower, you could breathe in lots of bacteria that would love to do some nasty stuff to you. Just another way that the narrator was unaware of that the planet is trying to kill us at any given moment. The more you know, I suppose. Check those water cylinder temperatures, guys. I'm the one who watches the GPS traces for people on ankle devices. I call your police officer when you leave or cut your strap. And no, we don't literally watch the thousands of devices on our screen, we only look at the GPS traces when the system sends an alert. For a while, I worked night security at specifically abandoned buildings, one of them being a water park kids liked to sneak into in the middle of the night. Yeah, terrifying people is fun. I'm a mosquito inspector. I travel to mosquito breeding habitats, look for larvae, then treat them accordingly. Also, some adulticiding. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I organize funerals on behalf of the state for people without any family. I have to search through their homes for any information about them, and I often turn up odd or interesting stuff. There are too many stories to recount them all, but here are a couple that stand out. I had one for a guy who lived in the same flat for over 30 years. Didn't have any family and only knew his landlord and maybe 1 or 2 neighbors. Nice man, but very private, always kept to himself, is a thing I hear and it applies to this person. He had an unusual name, but I'll call him Harry Smith for the sake of the video. I searched the property, found nothing unusual, and the funeral was held with minimal attendance. A few weeks later, when his estate was being wrapped up, we discovered that Harry Smith, same unusual name, same date and place of birth, had died years earlier in a different country. How could someone have died twice? More investigation turned up the fact that Harry had a brother who had gone AWOL from the army in the 50s and never been heard from again. The real Harry had died first, and his brother must have assumed his brother's name and lived in virtual isolation for half a century. I suppose terrified of being caught. A lady who had lots of friends but no family. She told all of her friends that she had had 2 sons and a husband who'd been killed in a car crash and had never remarried. She was apparently a very friendly, caring person from all the accounts I got from her friends. In her property was a case which had the birth certificates for her sons and her marriage certificate, but I did find it odd that the death certs weren't there as well. You get used to certain behaviors, and there was something that didn't add up about that to me. I put an ad in a local newspaper where her sons were born. I don't know what I was expecting, but sometimes you just hit and hope to see if something comes back. Anyway, I got a call from one of her sons who'd seen the ad. They were both still alive and had been looking for the mother who'd walked out on them for most of their lives. It was really sad. They had so many questions which would now never be answered. I put them in touch with the friends who were also devastated to learn that they'd been lied to. Nobody ever knew why she had walked out, and now they never would. There was also the man who got eaten by cats. There was a guy who lived alone and had about 20 cats living with him. A bit of a hermit and a bit odd from what his neighbors said. He died from natural causes, we believe, in his property, but with no one to find him, the cats spent the next week or two eating him. By the time the police broke down the door, he was practically skeletal, but apparently still with a full head of hair. Sadly, most of the cats were caught and put down, but a few escaped and were still in the area. When I visited the property, I got talking to a neighbor and one of the cats appeared. It had such a lush, shiny coat, and the neighbor was stroking it. Of course, the neighbors only knew that the man had died and not what the cats had done. Otherwise, I doubt that they would have been so comfortable with it. I saw cats in a different light after that. The mattress where he died was still soaked in blood, and the floorboards were sodden with cat pee. It was all a bit gruesome. Then there was the school photo. I found a school photo of a boy about 8 years old in the top of a drawer of a bedside table in one property. The deceased was a man in his 50s, no known family. I could make out part of the school name on the boy's shirt, and thanks to Google I managed to get in touch with the school, which was on the other side of the country. I sent over a scan of the picture, and amazingly the person I sent it to could remember the boy, who was now in his late 20s, and what's more, knew where his mum lived. The lady from the school contacted the mum, and it turned out it was her ex-husband who had died. He had had a drinking problem and had left the country several years earlier. She and her son had no idea where he'd ended up, and in the end they brought the body back to where the man was from for the funeral, with a estranged family in attendance, which was as nice an end as possible in the circumstances. Also, I found all sorts of adult reading material and other, bedroom toys. There was a transgender male to female whose floor was covered in adult toys. There were also a lot of Barbies. Another was a man who was a classic granddad type, toy train sets, pictures of old aircraft, tartan blankets, everything neat and tidy, who also had an impressive stash of gay reading material. And an older lady who had a framed picture of Patrick Swayze by her bed. I thought that was sweet. The longer you do it, the more you learn that everyone is unique, even if what makes them unique is hidden from even their closest friends. Ah, good. So traumatizing people with your private bedroom interests after you pass away isn't only the domain of people with families. Darn, I thought at least if I died alone I could do so without fear of judgment from people. Oh well. I just came off the road as a semi-truck driver and going to be starting as a drive-away driver. Basically, you pick up a semi, school bus, city bus, boom truck, straight truck, coach, ambulance, fire truck, RV, or even just a normal car or truck. You pick up the keys, papers, and inspect the vehicle before heading off. You do a daily log like a normal trucker would do, but you don't carry cargo. You basically just drive across the United States and drop the vehicle off. Sleep in a hotel for 10 hours and do it again. If you don't feel like working next week, ask dispatch for a vehicle that needs to be near where your house is located. The best part is you make your own days off because you are your own boss. Tire retread. A lot of people seem to think that old worn-out tires just get thrown out. Nope. A good bit will have the tread buffed off and a new tread applied. This is especially true with big rig tires. They are super expensive and it's much cheaper to retread them. I run a mail inserting machine for the state government. The state sends out a lot of mail, like holy crap. Most of ours comes from public welfare, but there's lots of different mailers from many agencies. We had a special job about a month ago that was over 9,000 pieces, on top of our mountains of normal daily jobs. The machine I run can do about 8,500 an hour of the easiest type of mailing, which is single sheet, no barcode, and goes in the most common envelope we have. If everything is running absolutely perfectly, which it never is because the machines can get grumpy, the best I did on that job was 71,000 in a night where I stayed overtime 4 hours. We get a break every 2 and half an hour for lunch. So 71,000 was the most I ever did in a day. Typically in a shift I can run 20 to 30,000 C-fold pieces, or 15 to 20 half-folds, depending on the types of jobs there are. Extras like inserts slow things down, and larger packages take longer than single sheets. So let's say you've applied for medical assistance, just as a hypothetical. Whether you're accepted or rejected, you'll get a notice in the mail about it. This notice is not mailed to you individually from the assistance office, it's bundled with thousands of other similar notices and sent to us digitally. It shows up on a big industrial printer, we have several, and the guys who run those print the files out, pile them up on carts or skids, and bring them to us inserters. We load the mailings onto the machine, which feeds the paper in, reads barcodes if the job has them, staples and folds the mail, puts in a return envelope or informational insert if need be, stuffs everything in an envelope, prints an address on the envelope if the envelope doesn't have windows, stamps it with postage and spits everything onto a conveyor where I collect it into mail bins to put on a cart and take to the back to get pre-sorted. Sometimes the machines act up and we have to fix them. Much cursing is involved. When I started with the state, I had a traditional desk job. It was ungodly boring and I gained a bunch of weight because I did almost nothing. I'm glad I found this job because I'm an unmotivated person and this is the workout I can't skip. I only sit down on my breaks. I'm always pushing carts, picking up boxes of envelopes, reams of paper, collecting mail and lifting mail trays, dragging fresh skids off envelopes from the back. I've lost over 30 pounds in a year and haven't changed my diet or anything. I'm just always moving. Having grown up with blue-collar parents, I think I'm just happier in a blue-collar working environment. It feels more comfortable and natural to me than being in an office. Plus, I'm not on first shift anymore, so I get a pay differential and I wake up at noon. It's the frickin' bomb. I work as an activities director at an Alzheimer's unit. A lot of places just let their residents sit at their rooms and wait to die, but at my place of work, we do tons of stuff like set up concerts, host church and wine tastings. It's the most fun and rewarding job I've ever had. What I normally do, if we don't have any guests or therapy or church service coming in, is bring my guitar and play a little concert for them. If you play an instrument, it's the perfect place to play, especially because they'll love anything you play, even if you're terrible. I'll also do small exercise routines in the morning, just to get them to do arm raises, leg kicks, just stuff to get the blood flowing. The ladies at my work love to bake cakes, so what I'll do is throw a cake in the oven, just one of those do-it-yourself Pillsbury ones you can get, and when it's done, I have the residents decorate and eat them. I've even heard of some places bringing a Wii and having the residents play things like golf and tennis and stuff, but I haven't tried that. I'm too scared the residents might get a little freaked out by it all. It seems interesting though. If you want to do more physical activities, those big parachutes are excellent. Just have all the residents in a circle and throw a ball in the middle and they'll love it. Reminds me of being in grade school as well. Just throwing around an inflatable beach ball is a fun activity for them as well. I'm a culinary producer on a food TV show, which basically means we handle all the food aspects of the program. If talent puts a chicken in the oven, cameras can't wait an hour, so my team swaps out the chicken for an already cooked piping hot one, or we choose all the secret ingredients on competition shows, build those massive pantries and help hosts and judges seem more food knowledgeable. I work for an international marine salvage company on a 200-foot tugboat in the Bering Sea. We do emergency tows and response when ships have issues. Basically, it's like AAA on the ocean. I think my job is well known, but maybe people don't quite comprehend it. I make costumes for movies. Seems normal. But I had a lady from accounts, we all work in the same studio lot, come to the costume department looking for a safety pin, and she was so taken aback by us sitting at sewing machines and was greatly impressed to hear that we could indeed make clothing. Like, where do you think the clothes on screen come from? H&M?
This seems like as good a day as any to stop lurking. I'm a Manatee Biologist. A good portion of my job is recovering carcasses and performing necropsies to determine cause of death. People are often confused when they see me dragging a dead manatee up a boat ramp to load it onto my truck. I also get to assist with rescues of sick or injured manatees, so I'm not totally surrounded by death. When my coworkers and I talk shop in social settings, we definitely get weird stares. Some days it's hard to believe I get paid to do this work.
I was a tissue recovery specialist. Basically, when people die, you don't just take their important organs. You take cornea, bones, ligaments, ribs, heart valves, and even blood vessels. All of this is done by a group of 5 to 6 people that come in a few hours after death, prep the body, cut them open, and take all the things out. Stuff and place in plastic bones, there to replace what we took. Even plastic hips. They then sew up the body with a fine stitch. I've sewn the flesh of human dead. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.